new Chakira that is done in Koach HaMoshech, gravity, Al Pi Chasidus, the concept of gravity in physics, as understood for what's called the Koach HaMoshech in Chasidus. This is Aharon Kastel, a rising star in the area of Mashiach and science, the grandson of our good friend Aharon Kastel from Tzach. Okay, let me introduce Aharon Kastel.
He said a few minutes. I've given shiurim on this in 2 hours, cut it down to an hour and a half, maybe an hour. I don't know exactly how much we're going to be able to get through in a few minutes, but we'll give it our best. The starting point is Hayom Yom Yudal Tammuz. I apologize, I'm speaking in English, especially in a few minutes. I definitely couldn't do it in Hebrew. Hayom Yom Yudal Tammuz. In a nutshell, what the Frierdiker Rebbe brings down, what the Tzemach Tzedek quotes from the Alter Rebbe, that the astronomers, classical astronomers perhaps, I'm not sure exactly at what time, had a question: how come the Americans, who are obviously on the bottom of the world, how come they do not fall off the earth? And the way it's printed in the Hayom Yom, the Rebbe leaves out what their answer is, specifically omits it, and goes on to say their answer is incorrect, and the correct answer is basically that up and down are relative to the earth, and the reason why that is because the Galgalim, the celestial spheres, are nishtalshel from Igulim, from the spheres the way they are in Eilim Yisrael Yenim, which over there they're true spheres, etc. So a lot of people see this Hayom Yom and their first assumption is, it says their answer is incorrect, their answer is most probably gravity. It says gravity is incorrect. Okay, Chassidus doesn't believe in gravity. I've found a very common understanding of Hayom Yom. I think it's quite easy to prove that is a misunderstanding, in fact. If we actually look in the source of the Hayom Yom, in any of the numerous sources and nuschos that are found, what it actually says is that the Teichnim suggested their answer was that Adam Yisod may offer, a person is made up of the Yisod, the one of the four elements of offer of earth, and called Davar Nimshach L'Sharshay, called Yisod Meishachas Yisodei. Everything in general, everything in general is drawn to its source, and more specifically, the elements are drawn to their source in the more general element. Now, anyone who's opened up a few volumes of Chassidus before knows that the four elements are found all over Chassidus, and if you've looked far enough, you'll know that the explanation given in Chassidus for things falling is exactly that. Is that there's a certain element in each thing that's miskaber, and that causes something to fall. So some people want to try and still wriggle out and say the Hayom Yom is still differentiating between that answer and our own answer. They say that perhaps the stone falls because you say the offer, but that's because of this. You say the offer causes some sort of nature within the stone itself to fall, which is not very easy to understand exactly what that means, and it happens to be contradicted by empirical fact, and also it's actually not what Chassidus says. What Chassidus actually says, the clearest place is in Sefer Sichos, Toshmim Tes, page 284, 39, I think, but it's also in Kodi Sichos Chelik Vav, it's also in the Mitzvah Rebbe's Maimarim. Those are the three very clear places. Chassidus says exactly that. Chassidus says that Kol Davar Nimshach L'Sharshay, and so therefore all the Yisodis are drawn to the earth. So before we go and analyze exactly what that means and what the details of that are within Chassidus, let's first go back and try to understand, so what was the Hayom Yom saying? If we have the exact same answer that they do, so what do we mean to say that their answer is incorrect?
And the answer is incorrect, that it's not gravity. That gravity is not the force that causes things to fall down.
But it didn't mention gravity. It mentioned.
What did it mention? What did it mean?
So it mentioned a particular explanation of why things fall and said that's incorrect, when at the very same time, called davar nimshach l'sharshay, in short, which at the very same time, that is precisely the explanation that is found word for word, almost, in Chassidus and other places, right? So we have here what we call in Torah a stira, right? Very simple, right? No, there's no wriggling out of it and saying it means this, it means that. The lashonos are very clear, right? So, just another question or two on the Yem Yem before we explain it, just to make things a little clearer what's going on over here. If you actually look at the Yem Yem, it does not discuss things falling. It does not discuss why you and I fall if we jump up. It's not mentioned once. What does it talk about? It talks about specifically why Americans do not fall. Right? Now, if you or I would want to write an alternative to gravity, why wouldn't we attack the main issue? Right? The main issue, what gravity comes to explain, is why we fall, not why Americans aren't falling off the earth.
What's falling is gravity? Oh no.
Can we leave all the questions for the end, please? Sorry. So, right? So, that seems quite incongruous. If we're going to say that the Alter Rebbe is trying to explain what gravity means, why is he coming at it from this angle? So, what I think is quite clear is that we have to first look at what was their question, right? Another detail in their question that needs to be understood. Where did they bring in gravity? Gravity is part of their answer. It's something that they innovated as part of their answer, right? That means in their question, gravity doesn't exist. Yet they have a question why something does not fall. So they have an explanation of falling clearly that does not involve gravity, right? There's two things going on here. There's things falling independent of gravity, and then superimposed upon that, we have the idea of gravity as well. So in short, what they originally thought was that there is an up and down completely independent of the earth, right? And everything falls from up to down. Why? No explanation. Simple scientific extrapolation. We see that's the way it is. That's what we experience in day-to-day life. It must be the same everywhere. And so that's what they assumed. One just interesting way of bringing it out, almost all the Nuschayos mention the idea of an apple, right? So just imagine an apple in a room, right? You can turn the apple this way or that way or the other way and decide what's up and what's down. At the end of the day, you've always got the roof and you've always got the floor, right? So you've always got the up and the down, and things fall from up to down without any force being involved. Then they decided, well, how are we going to hold the Americans up, right? The Americans are falling down. How are we going to hold them up? So we need to introduce another second force called gravity. Now, this second force they introduced happens to be correct, but it's the wrong resolution to their problem. The correct resolution to their problem is to say there is no such thing as up and down independent of the earth. There is no reason why things should fall down without a force to pull it down. That is the correct resolution, right? Therefore, tirutzam eno emes. It's simply incorrect to say that the reason why Americans are not falling is because of gravity. The reason the Americans are not falling off the earth is because there's no reason they should be. Furthermore, we see also in the Middle Rebbe's Hanacha, and also in the way that the Tzemach Tzedek then brings it down in another place in Orei Torah, that they describe this answer to the Teichlim as a deichik gadol, right? Now, a deichik gadol doesn't mean something is incorrect, right? Something can be incorrect, and it could still be not a deichik. A deichik means it's illogical. It's something that's difficult to understand. It's strange. There's something wrong with it. So what we've said so far is that it's incorrect. How do we see that it's strange? So, as we mentioned before, they have now two forces, right? They have what we might call the falling force, this inexplicable force that things just fall from up to down. And they also have gravity, right? Now, if anyone did basic physics, there's something called addition of forces, right? We have to reconcile these two forces. How are they going to affect the world? So, In America, it's very simple, right? That's what they're talking about. In America, you have the falling force is going down. You have a force of gravity twice as strong as that, pulling up, right? It has to be twice as strong in order that it should both hold the Americans up and provide them with weight, right? So it has to be twice as strong, right? What happens on the upper hemisphere, right? If we want to keep the effects uniform, that means there's no gravity in the upper hemisphere, which is completely irrational because it's the same Earth, right? It's the same Earth and the same masses that are producing this gravity or that are interacting with this gravity. Why would one hemisphere have absolutely no gravity? I'm exaggerating slightly without getting into the details. Have absolutely no gravity, and another hemisphere have gravity. It makes no sense. But I don't think that's even what they were suggesting. Rather, what they were suggesting is that the force is uniform. Now, if the force is uniform, that means that the same apple weighs 3 times as much in the upper hemisphere as it does on the lower hemisphere. Because you've got the gravity, which we said is twice as much as the falling force, right, on the upper hemisphere, plus the falling force is 3 times. On the bottom, you've only got one part of gravity is giving you weight, right? So it's 3 times as much, which clearly there were already people who had visited America. It's something that everybody would have experienced. It's something that's very deific. So in short, what we've seen so far is that the Hayom Yom is not rejecting gravity, and we understand what the Hayom Yom was in fact rejecting, which was the idea of up and down and independent of the earth, which is exactly what the Alter Rebbe says. If you read it, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say anything else, right? He doesn't give an explanation why things fall. He simply explains what's up and down and why that is so. Now, just to perhaps give a little bit of a peek into what the rest is about, and then I guess we're going to finish off. People are already leaving. But the first challenge is if we're saying kol davar nimshach l'sharshay, right? So each yisaid is drawn to its yisaid. That would mean earth is drawn downwards to the earth. Water would be drawn more or less in parallel to other water, right? Because the oceans and along with the tablelands are considered the yisaid hamayim. The air would not go down; it would go up, right? It would not be affected by gravity. And fire, of course, goes up. Without getting into fire now. So, that would be problematic if we want to try and compare the two. It would seem that they are clearly different. That's not, in fact, the case. The Frierdiker Rebbe clearly explains that it's actually one system, that where the Yisodis are is based on their weight, and works through displacement. Since one thing is above another because it's going down less, and the Rebbe explains how this fits in with the idea of kol davar nimshach l'sharshay. There's a pasuk in Koheles, Akoel haya min ha'ofer, that everything originates from the Yisod HaOfer. All 4 Yisodos originally come from the Yisod HaOfer, including actually, in one version of the Medrash, Afilu Gal Galachama, even the sun itself. So therefore what we come out with is that actually all matter derives from Ofer, and therefore it's all drawn together to the Ofer. Another major question is that gravity describes any 2 masses as attracting each other, right? In Chassidus L'chair you have the source, and the source is then drawing something that came from it. But it's not being drawn. There's not a mutual attraction. It's a very one-sided affair. But in fact, there are sufficient sources in Chassidus without getting in the very limited time that we have, without getting into all the details. But there are sufficient sources in Chassidus, particularly when we look at other applications of the same law of everything is drawn to its source, which is a law that's cited some 50 times in Chassidus. So there's a wide range of applications. One of them is that when you have Eish and you have Mayim, right? So generally, everything is composed of a certain combination of those 4 elements. How can the elements combine when they're opposites? So what the explanation given is that each element has within itself the other elements, and therefore the Eish Shemamayim is attracted to the Eish Sheba-Eish. So what we end up having is, firstly, it's called this force, if you want to call it, or this law of Kol Davar Nimshach Sharshay, applied to two details, right? Not to the original source, but to two details, as opposed to, let's say, the sphere of fire, talking about two particles, right? That's firstly, and secondly, we have it in a way that it's mutual between the two particles. In a bit of a different application, the Mitzvah Rebbe also says that Kol Davar Nimshach L'Shorish is the reason why a son will follow his father, even before he's able to understand that it is his father. And in one Maimer, Mitzvah Rebbe adds, and therefore the father will also be drawn to the son. That means, in effect, that the source is also drawn to its derivative. So that's what the Mitzvah Rebbe is describing in those many Maimarim. One last point, the one thing that I was not able to resolve is that according to the Torah view of astronomy, gravity has no place in astronomy, not because gravity wouldn't affect the heavenly bodies, as we said before, even the sun is derived from Afar, so it would be subject to gravity, but that's not the mechanism described by the Rambam why the orbits occur. Rather, it's the whole idea of Galgalim, the Ptolemaic system, and there doesn't seem to be any room for gravity in that. Other than that, I don't think there are any differences.
Just a small question.
Sure.
How you relate that there is a possibility on Earth, let's assume that there is gravity, that they can make forces to eliminate that so people can fly on Earth.